Hello. Here we are again with the Bhagavad Gita. We are starting into chapter 13. Let me put this, get me out of the way, which is on the knowledge of the field and the knower of the field. Now, after having all these preliminary paths of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, after talking about the principles of the paths themselves, and the last couple chapters of Arjuna's having his internal experience being given of the absolute reality and the many faces, etc. Let me put this a little bigger like this. I think I can do that. Now we come to understanding the nature of the whole field of consciousness, so to speak. Arjuna said, I wish to know your primordial nature, Prakriti, and your conscious principle, Purusha, the field and the field knower, knowledge and the knowable, O Krishna. The Blessed Lord said, O son of Kunti, this body is called a field. He who knows this, him the experts in this matter call the field knower. Common language we often hear of the witness as being Atman. Hi, Scott. And hello, Alexei. So here we are. As Swami Rama explains, after imparting the knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of divine love in the last chapter, Sri Krishna explains to Arjuna that the body is like a field that yields ambrosial fruit. When the aspirant knows the importance of this field and knows the difference between the field and its knower, he finally realizes the self, capital S self. It is essential to have a profound knowledge of the body and to look after it with utmost care. Hello, Ed McDonald. One who knows the importance of this body and knows that it is in the possession of Atman is wise indeed. Such an aspirant uses his body as an instrument to attain the purpose of life. In this chapter, the word kshetra, the field, is used to signify the body, and kshetrajna, the field knower, as the individual soul. It is the duty of every human being to fully know the field in the form of the body. There's a really wonderful principle in here to remember. There's the field and the field knower. So when we talk about inspection or introspection, inspection within and the four functions of mind and the indriyas and the antakarana and all of that sort of stuff, gradually what we are doing is coming to know the field knower, because eventually what we see is there is only one knower who is able to actually witness all aspects of our being, and that is the Atman, or the capital S self. The field is both an individual's body and the body of the Lord, or you could say the body of the whole universe. When one is realized, he is aware that the whole universe is his body. The Lord alone is the proprietor of all the bodies in the universe, for he alone pervades all the bodies and has profound knowledge of them. The infinite bodies of this universe are like the fields of one farmer, the Lord. So the Lord, the idea is the Lord, the absolute consciousness is the farmer, and the whole universe is the field that the farmer is tilling. There is nothing that is not known by the Lord. The inner dweller in the human body is Atman, which is eternal and infinite in its essential nature. When the aspirant realizes his true self, such a Purusha, an individual soul becomes a Purushottama, that's right, the best of souls, for he attains godhood. When the aspirant knows that there is no difference between himself and the universal form of the Lord, he realizes that he is Atman and that the whole universe is his field. That's pretty big, huh? The same Atman that dwells within him dwells in all of the universe. The relationship between Atman and the body, the knower and the field, and that between Atman and the universe is the same. Every aspirant should acquire knowledge of this relationship. If that knowledge is not gained, one's knowledge is false knowledge or illusion. And I want to add here too, remember, a simple way of holding this notion is that think of everything that we observe in the external world, or everything that we observe in our own self. Just now I'm feeling that I just felt a moment of need to adjust my legs and my feet and this chair below me. And that is a field. Just whatever we're doing, if we cultivate the awareness, it's very, very useful that I am witnessing an aspect of this field that is called me. Ordinary human beings suffer because of such false knowledge. Sri Krishna explains to Arjuna that the body is like a field and the individual soul is the knower. And there's Johnny. Hello, Johnny. If anybody has a great insight or anything and type it in there, I'll put it on there. We can all take a look at it. Only the knowledge of both is considered to be true knowledge, knowing the field and the field knower. Atman is the Lord of the body. As the beads of a necklace have a thread that passes through them, so the multifaceted universe has the universal self running through and sustaining it. Body and individual soul are related to one another in the same way that Prakriti is related to Purusha. Body and individual soul are related to one another in the same way that Prakriti is related to Purusha. So there's this whole infinite field of Prakriti, and it has a relation to Purusha. And our own personal physical body and our individual soul, Atman, have a comparable relationship. The universe is the outcome of the two fundamental principles of one absolute without a second, Purusha, and Prakriti, primordial matter. From Prakriti and Purusha, all the animate and inanimate forms of the world are born, maintained, and destroyed. Nothing can exist without the Lord's Prakriti. All the manifestations in the universe are diverse forms of Prakriti. Then Krishna speaks again. Know me, O descendant of Bharata. And of course, here's a me again that's a poetic use of the words me as a symbol of Brahman, the absolute reality. Know me, O descendant of Bharata, as the field knower in all fields. That which is the knowledge of the field and of the field knower, I hold that to be true knowledge. What that field is, of what kind, causing what products, and produced from what, and of what power and effect it is, hear that from me briefly. Hi, Scott. I'd like to understand what you're saying about the field better and being aware of it. Yeah, I would like you to have a better understanding of it too, Scott. And the good news is you can, and the bad news is you just have to do it. So as you are sitting there participating in what we're doing right now, just for a moment, if I say, let's do a guided relaxation, we think, well, okay, there's a me and I'm learning how to relax. So if I say, be aware of your feet, Scott, and be aware of your legs and your knees and your butt and your trunk and your arms and your hands, we would say, okay, we're doing a guided relaxation. If we take exactly the same thing, Scott, exactly the same practice, so to speak, and I say, be aware of your feet, and you, Scott, are aware of your feet. The simplicity of this instruction is to acknowledge that there is somebody, there is an awareness who is aware of a field that includes feet. The field. The farmer looks out at his field of corn growing out there. The Scot is aware of the feet that are down there. I can be aware of this table here. I can be aware of these hands here and of these fingers. This is the field. The knower is in here somewhere. If I, as I'm talking to you, become aware of the movement of my tongue and a hiccup, if I'm aware of that and the movement of my throat and my lips and all of this is a part of the field. Back to the relaxation metaphor, it's not merely that I am trying to relax my body as me. I am being aware that there is an awareness aware of this field. And it includes this shoulder, and it includes these arms, and it includes these fingers, and it includes this computer, and this keyboard, and this table, and all of this is the field. I hope that makes sense, Scott. It's an approach. It's a way of playing with this stuff. And it's all we can do is just keep observing. You've heard me tell the story about walking with Swami Rama one day, and he unloaded these two words on me that at the time made absolutely no sense to me. I told him that. He said, witness everything. And I said back after a moment of reflection, I don't think I know how to do that, Swamiji. And he said, it will come. And that's kind of what I'm saying here, Scott. Okay, Scott says, okay. So it's progress. And we're just stuck with this. We're stuck with the fact that these kind of instructions here, in some sense, don't make sense initially. And that's why we go through it over and over and over again. It's not that we're going through this because it's intellectual information and we're memorizing data to take on an exam in a college class. That's not what we're doing. The reason we keep going through this over and over and over again is because sometimes we look at one of these sentences and it hits home. I don't know what's going to hit home for anybody at any time. I just don't know. But if I play with this, who knows? Maybe the comment that I made to you a couple minutes ago about being aware of your feet, maybe that touches something in you. And 10 years from now, you're telling some people, the thing that changed my life is when that foolish old man told me to be aware of my feet. I've been being aware of my body for years, doing relaxations. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, my feet are a part of a field of Prakriti. My children are part of a field of Prakriti. Yes, of course, I love them. And of course, yes, I can see Purusha in my children. But my children as physical creatures are part of the vast field. And this is what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna here. And this is what Swami Rama is trying to explain to us a little bit more, okay? You're stuck with that, Scott. You just have to live with it. Live with it. When the aspirant attains profound knowledge of both Atman and the body, jhana and vijnana, he is fulfilled. In Upanishadic philosophy, that knowledge is called the knowledge of discrimination, through which one knows the difference between the real self, Atman, and the temporal, mundane, and apparent reality of the phenomenal world. That knowledge should be imparted early in life so that one can know life as it is. Okay, yeah, good. And there's a laugh out loud. Goody, goody. We have to laugh over this stuff or it'll drive you crazy, right? During ancient times, the serious student called a brahmachari lived in an ashram and practiced celibacy until the age of 25. He devoted himself to learning that knowledge with a one-pointed mind. Different words have been used to designate that knowledge, but the knowledge of the self and the non-self, of Atman and the phenomenal reality, of Purusha and Prakriti, and of knower and the field is one and the same. In the Brahma Sutra, the same knowledge that is imparted here is described in a well-preserved and conclusive manner. Many sages of the past have also expounded that knowledge in various ways. So pointing out again that there are many ways to say this thing that we're talking about, but there is a field and there is a knower of the field. There is a field of Prakriti and there's a Purusha. There's a somebody inside of Scott who has the ability to observe all of the aspects and levels of Scott, and gradually will come to see that, wait a minute, all of those aspects of me are but the field. And I'm looking at a field, and I have mistakenly come to think that who I am is the field. And I'm not. I'm the observer of the field. Slowly, slowly. As sung of by the sages variously and by manifold Vedic mantras in different ways, as well as by the words of the sutras that teach about Brahman and that are definitive and logical. The five great elements, ego, intelligence, and the unmanifest, the 10 and 1 senses, as well as the 5 pastures of the senses, desire, aversion, pleasure, pain, the whole organism, awareness, sustenance. This is illustrated briefly as the field, together with its products. What the meanings, that's what grows out of the fields. In these verses, Sri Krishna lists all of the components of Prakriti, the field. They are the constituents of the human body and the universe: earth, water, fire, wind, and space. Ego sense, intelligence, non-manifest Prakriti, the senses of smell, taste, sight, touch, and hearing, the mouth, hands, feet, and the organs of procreation and excretion, mind, the 5 objects of the senses, smell, taste, form, touch, and sound, desire, hatred, pleasure, and pain, the organism, the aggregate of all sentience and sustenance. With these last 7 entities, Prakriti becomes 21-fold, and that 31-fold Prakriti is called field. I'll add here, when you look at various texts, you can find different numbers of these primal elements. So here this says 31, and there's 31, and there was 21. Somewhere else it has 18. Somewhere else it has 19. And I would suggest when you run into that and you happen to notice, oh, wait a minute, this is a different list of number of things, which one is right? I would encourage you, when you run into that, don't fall into the trap of looking for which one is right and which one is wrong. If there's 5 of us in this conversation and we all look at a pretty picture, somebody says, look at a pretty picture here, and now all of us write some words down to describe that pretty picture. We're not going to all use the same words. We're going to use different words, and we're going to use a different number of words. And yet each one of them is a fair description of that object that we're trying to draw. If you take an object and you put it in the middle of a room, and there's 5 of us sitting there with a canvas and pencil or pen or paint and paintbrushes, and we all draw pictures. We'd all draw on a canvas a painting or a drawing of that object that's sitting in the center amongst it. We will end up with 5 very different paintings or drawings, and yet they are all of the same object, and we will be able to look at those 5 and see, well, they carry essentially a comparable meaning, but yet they are different, and that's the way this goes. So don't get thrown off by here this saying 31 and somewhere else it says 20 something and somewhere else it says 19. It's not a problem. Don't let it throw you off. All of its constituents go through modification and change by intermixing, and thus are able to create different forms. I'll give you here an example that you already know, we all already know. When we talk about this Prakriti and say all of Prakriti is the manifestation of 3 gunas, and we say, well, what are the gunas? And you read a thing, you hear a thing about gunas, you say, well, I still don't understand. Please explain to me more. Tell me what gunas are. What are these 31 evolutes of Prakriti? I don't understand. Well, remember when we were in school, we were school children, and they told us that water is H2O, and that means it's 2 part hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, and somehow you took 2 gases. Think about this. You took 2 gases. You took hydrogen, a gas, and oxygen, a gas, and somehow you jammed them together, and it became water. And the hydrogen and the oxygen and the cup of water, see, I have here a little glass of water here. All of these, here I'm going to make this big so you can really see the point here. This is water. It's also H2O. And yet, however I look at this, it's composed of only protons, electrons, and neutrons. There's only 3 things: protons, electrons, and neutrons. And then remember, I'm not trying to be smart with this. I'm saying we all know this. We learned it in school, and we may not be scientists, but we did not question it in great depth. Or if we were like Albert Einstein and we wanted to know, we kept searching. Finally, he came up with this formula, and all of us have heard this formula, E = mc squared. What is he telling us? He's telling us that this glass of water is actually really energy, or it's matter, that the primal thing of the universe is matter or it's energy, and energy converts into matter, and matter converts into energy. And we all know this. We all learned it at school, and we accept it. We just nod and say, well, yes, of course. I learned that when I was 8 years old, and I kind of understand it. All I'm saying to you here is notice that a similar sort of thing is being made. And yet when we hear about it being Prakriti and 31 elements of Prakriti, and we say it's earth, water, fire, air, space, for example, we get confused. And our intelligent minds kick in, and we say to somebody, please give me an exact explanation so I can understand this. All I'm pausing here for is to say, remember, we have already been exposed to this phenomenon that multiplicity, the complexity of the world, comes from a ground simplicity. All there is matter that's convertible to energy, and that matter is only in protons, electrons, and neutrons, or string theory, or quarks, or whatever the latest theory is. But all of that keeps combining and recombining and recombining so that I can have water and I can have a plastic cup in which the water is contained. Watch this. Now some of the water went away, and I swallow the water, and when in a very short time, the molecules of that water will be in my bloodstream. And then I will call it me. You get the idea? Then it's me. Well, it's the same water. We all know this. Some of this stuff is stuff that we already know from living in the world. So don't make it complicated. You use your intelligence to realize, wait a minute, I can understand this stuff here. These modifications are constantly changing into various forms. They are the components from which the universe is built. There you go. Oops, I'm going to turn that that way again. absence of self-praise, freedom from hypocrisy, nonviolence, forgiveness, simplicity, service to the teacher, purity, stillness, and self-control. A dispassionate attitude toward the objects of the senses, as well as the absence of ego, observing the flow of painfulness in birth, death, old age, and illness. All of these as best we can do these. Freedom from attraction, freedom from attachment toward progeny, spouse, home, and so forth, and ever remaining even-minded when confronted with desirables and or undesirables. Undeviated devotion towards me with single-minded yoga. Fondness for solitary places, not delighting in gatherings of people, always dwelling in spiritual knowledge, insight into the meaning of true nature. This is said to be knowledge. Other than this is ignorance. And then we just want to let all of that sink in. Devotion towards me means an attitude. It means an exciting, passionate attitude of feeling overwhelmed when we even ponder the nature of infinity, of this infinite non-dual reality. When we ponder that, there's an emotional thing happen. You know, it says freedom from progeny, freedom from attachment to progeny. So what does that mean? That you take your children and you sell them off into slavery? No. But as you become aware, no, these are individual human beings. And look at the habit of my mind and ego that keeps having a tendency to think that they are mine. And we pause and we catch ourselves, we remind ourselves, no, these are independent, individual human beings. And we're living a life together right now. And I have taken on some duties to them, to take what I've learned in life and help share it with them. But they are not my property, and on and on. So we look at every one of these little ideas that's presented here. All of my senses, I can smell and taste and see and touch and hear. But when I experience every one of them, realize, no, this is just an act in the play of Prakriti. And I do this with non-attachment. Recognize what it is. Swami Rama goes on. These verses focus on putting knowledge into practice. To merely know something intellectually is not to have profound knowledge of it. We all know what to do and what not to do, but we do not know how to actualize that knowledge. Each of us understands certain fundamental truths about how to live, yet we do not know how to put them into practice. It is important to understand those truths from a practical viewpoint. In childhood, one is instructed in all the fundamentals to be good, nice, kind, and gentle. Yet he is not taught how to bring them into practice. Practicing truth is different from learning to know truth. These 5 verses describe qualities that are systematically developed over time, I will add, in the path of yoga. Yoga. Pride, conceit, and thoughts of hurting and injuring others are characteristics of the ignorant. Now notice in yourself that we can have those tendencies. Injuring others does not mean we're taking a stick and beating people, but it's that little sharp comment that comes out of your mouth to a loved family member or a friend when you just had a bad day, and it just sort of leaks out. No, we're not bad people. But it's thoughts of hurting and injuring, and they just come out. It comes from pride. There's a conceit in there that's about me. Doesn't make us bad people. This is part of coming outward as Purusha into the human condition of Prakriti. Kindness, gentleness, love, forgiveness, straightforwardness, service to one's elders and preceptors, and the steady practice of spirituality are the virtues and characteristics of the wise aspirant. If those qualities are lacking, one remains ignorant. All the virtues and weaknesses should be understood, and the virtues should be cultivated with all sincerity and firmness of will. The student should practice these principles, which will enable him to expand his consciousness and to fathom the higher levels of consciousness. Then he is clearly treading the path of spirituality. For example, if one wants to practice loving others, he should understand and practice ahimsa, non-harming, non-injuring, and non-hurting. If he is still running after sensual enjoyments, craving the pleasures of the world, attached and haunted by worldly desire, then he is ignorant. That is not the path of spirituality. The first step of knowledge makes one aware of his shortcomings, and in the second step he learns to remove them. In the third step he acquires virtues like ahimsa, which is the singular expression of love. In the fourth step, one completely abstains from those actions that are injurious to his growth. Those who have firm faith in the inner dweller and who devotedly love the inner dweller, Atman, as the Lord of life, are not attached to spouse, children, or home. Now notice here in this sentence structure, those who have firm faith. The word those means those individuals. Those individuals are the composite total. So it's the me, or it's the Scott, or it's the Johnny, or it's the Ed, or the Alexei. And so that composite being is a combination of pure consciousness, Purusha, along with all of those manifestations of Prakriti. There's a total there that is a me. So I have firm faith in the inner dweller. Now note that this is in effect saying a false identity me is having faith in the inner dweller, which actually is the true self. So we start from where we are. We start from being asleep, thinking that this body is who I am, and these senses are who I am, and these samskaras made of Prakriti are who I am. We start from there and then have firm faith in the inner dweller. And we love the inner dweller. We develop a sense of strong passion towards that consciousness within. And I know that you all know what I'm talking about. When one attains evenness, he loses all attachment to externals and strengthens his love for the true self alone. When he attains absolute evenness, this is true. I'll add here, when one attains partial evenness, he loses some or a great deal of attachment to the externals. We all know this. We live it by doing our sadhana. We watch our own attachments weaken and weaken and weaken, and love for others and Atman and God and truth increase. Such an aspirant, take the positive side of this word. Such an aspirant isolates himself and devotes his time and energy towards spiritual sadhana. The word isolate in our common language, we all know this is unhealthy. It means withdrawing from other people in a dysfunctional kind of way. That's not the spirit of this word isolate. If you make a decision to not live a Saturday night's lifestyle, that here comes the weekend and I'm going to go out and party and go to the bars and hang out with multiple partners, and you just say, I'm not going to live that kind of lifestyle. That is a healthy process of the word isolating. And it's in a way when you say, I'm going to hang out with other people of like mind in satsang, that is a form of isolating from the craziness of the word. But as we all know, this word isolate can also sound like a pathology. I'm just pausing to say that because obviously that's not what we're talking about. He prefers to be in meditation and to remain in the company of the sages. And if you're remaining in the company of sages or other sadhakas or other people in common language, other people of like mind, that is not isolating in the pathological sense. It is isolating from the craziness of the external world. But those who scratch the surface of the mundane world with their hearts filled with desires and who are not aware of the true self within are ignorant. By studying the behavior of both the sages and the ignorant, study them both. one can see that their paths are totally opposite. One is the path of light, and the other is the path of darkness. One is the path of knowledge, and the other is the path of ignorance. A person's behavior reflects certain characteristics that indicate whether he is knowledgeable or not. By studying human behavior, how one talks, thinks, and acts, we can understand who is on the path of knowledge and who is not. Kindness, forgiveness, non-attachment, and self-control are characteristics of the knowledgeable, whereas pride, conceit, hatred, egotism, attachment, and desire for worldly enjoyments are characteristics of the ignorant. And I'll add here that when we're observing these differences in people, this does not mean that we're doing this in a judgmental, negative way where you and I go off on an ego trip about how wonderful we are and how screwed up those other people are. That's not the spirit. If we fall into that trap, then we are describing ourselves with this ignorant thing, and we've fallen into the trap. So it's not talking about that. It's something to be mindful of, to not accidentally fall into the trap of thinking how great I am and how great we are and how screwed up everybody else is. That which is the worthy object of knowledge I shall teach you, knowing which one attains immortality. It is beginningless, supreme Brahman, which is said to be neither existent nor non-existent. Is my comments dying here? Nobody has said anything there. Am I losing my comments, or is everybody's just being quiet? I take it everybody's just being kind of quiet there. With hands and feet, this is a metaphor, with hands and feet in all directions, with eyes, heads, faces in all directions, having ears everywhere, he dwells, covering everything in the world. So when you and I look at our world around us and we see life manifesting all around us, we know or cultivate the awareness that I am seeing Paramatma, or universal consciousness, or Brahman, being quiet. Okay. Yeah, Yolanda is there. Hi, Yolanda. It's contemplative. Johnny. Good. That's what I was thinking. This is pretty rich stuff, isn't it? You just sort of go into it and take the journey. With hands and feet in all directions, with eyes, heads, faces in all directions, having ears everywhere, he dwells, covering everything in the world. So when we sit here together, and here's a Swami J, and there's a Johnny, and a Scott, and a Yolanda, and an Ed, and an Alexei, when we're all sitting here together, it does not mean that there's one giant human being called he or him, and that he is manifesting outward as me, and that I'm just a puppet of that man in the sky. That's a certain primitive starting point view, but this is not what we're talking about. Remember, this is a story. This is poetry that is being used to give us wisdom, and we must practice listening to the meaning that is behind the metaphors. So when we hold it like that, we see life manifesting everywhere. We see consciousness manifesting everywhere. So if there's 6 of us in the conversation, that's 12 eyes. It's 12 ears. It's 6 mouths. It's 60 fingers. It's 60 toes, unless somebody's lost a toe, and then we're down to 59 or something like that. This is the spirit, with hands and feet in all directions, with eyes, heads, and faces in all directions, having ears everywhere. He, the one consciousness, dwells, covering everything in the world, appearing as though having attributes of all the senses, yet devoid of all senses. The consciousness itself is devoid of senses. It operates out through senses, and those attributes are there, and they're real in the external sense. But it's beyond, unattached, yet bearer of all, free of gunas, yet receiver of gunas. So the Purusha is not Prakriti. Prakriti is the three gunas, and that three gunas, like the protons, electrons, and neutrons, combine and recombine and manifest all of this out here. It manifests all of us as individual people and all of the objects in our homes, our ashrams, and all this. The world around us, all the birds, all the bugs, everything out there. Immobile, yet moving inside and outside beings, unknowable because of its subtlety, unknowable on the surface level. It dwells far and yet is near. Undivided in the beings, yet remaining as though divided. There appears to be a Nilesh and a Johnny and a Scott and a Yolanda, and not existent and not existent and not non-existent Brahman. Yes, that means Brahman is what is and nothing else. Yes. But then we're stuck with the fact, Nilesh, we have to just keep pondering that and ponder it in the sense of me as the apparent being called Nilesh, and the apparent Johnny, and the apparent Scott, and the apparent Yolanda, and the apparent Swami J, and all that kind of stuff. Immobile, yet moving inside and outside beings, unknowable because of its subtlety. It dwells far and is near. Undivided in the beings, yet remaining as though divided. Bearer of all the beings is that object of knowledge, the consumer, and also the creator. Consumer meaning that which consumes. There's an Upanishadic prayer that says, lead me from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from mortality to immortality. Asatoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya amritarma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Nice little. You can think of that as a prayer, or you can think of it as a mantra. If you think of prayer, you may ponder, well, to whom am I praying? Is there a being that I'm supposed to be praying to, or is it an affirmation or a mantra for contemplation? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. So choose the perspective that works for you best. If you like the idea of prayer and that you're saying that to an entity or a being or divinity, that's fine. If you think of it as an affirmation, that's fine. If you think of it as a contemplative contemplation mantra, that's fine too. This is one of the mantras. I don't know what everybody's doing in their life. Hi, Nellie. But we start the day and end the day here in the ashram every day with a cluster of mantras. I don't promote this a lot because I'm not trying to convince people that these are the mantras to use. But starting your day and ending your day today with some reflection like this is extremely useful. Try, if you're not doing it, give it a try and you'll discover it. So before your morning meditation, have some routine that you can think of as prayer or contemplation, and use some of these kind of mantras, whether it's in English like this, or you go back to the Sanskrit or Latin or Greek or whatever language of whatever it is you're intrigued to. There's something of great value in starting and ending your day in this kind of way. Hi, Nellie. Just off work, and what a gift. You're still on live. Bhagavad Gita, nonetheless, huh? Since ancient times, man has been seeking immortality, something permanent, not darkness, but light. The human being is striving to attain immortality. And it's not that the mortal me is going to actually literally attain immortality and I, as this physical composite person, am going to become mortal. No, this physical body is going to fall away. It means that we come to know, I know you know this, we come to know, be aware of, and pretty much constantly operating with some version or another of the awareness of our friendly little question mark of the Atman. So all of this is here. My body is here in the levels of my mind, and I'm breathing, but I have some degree of awareness of this, and it's with me all the time. Not new information, I know, but we just keep seeing the same stuff over and over. The interior researcher knows that immortality resides in the depths of every human being. So the interior researcher is that composite me that is loaded with false identities and attractions, aversions, attachments, fears, and is made of prakriti. That totality interior researcher knows that immortality resides in the depths of me and everybody else. To attain that awareness, the aspirant should first dive into the deepest level of his being. We may discover that the being that I'm diving into is actually not me. I'm diving into the false identities, but you can't tear apart every sentence. First, dive into the deepest level of his being. The highest of truth is beyond all comprehension by the human senses and the mind. So the mind operates in the conscious level and the active unconscious and even the latent level. And the senses operate out here, and the senses operate in the dreams. But the thing we're seeking is beyond the senses in the external sense, and it's beyond the dreams. One should not waste his time and energy searching outside for that which is buried deeply within the tomb of the human body. It does not mean that we all have to always stay home. You want to go out and play in the world, go play in the world. But while you're playing in the world, be aware of that consciousness that is inside in the center. Do that. Be aware. Enjoy life. Be in the world. So when Matri is here, sometimes we get working and we have pretty busy times around here. We're supposed to be sitting around doing nothing. And sometimes we'll run away and go to a movie theater and take in a really crazy movie. It's being out in the world. And part of the game of going to a movie is that it allows you to practice being aware of Atman right in the middle of this insane movie. And you're not having to go out and actually literally do the insane things that are being portrayed on the movie screen. So it's a fun game to play. Be in the world. That which is imperishable, unchangeable, without beginning and end, completely unattached and shining with all its splendor, resides in its glory, all-pervading power and majesty, both within and without. And this goes back, remember, the subject we're talking about here is the field and the field knower. All of these efforts to do what's right here is talked about here is the effort to be aware of the field knower, and that everything out there is the field. It is the only one to be known, for it is the highest self, remaining ever present in the inner chamber of every being. Yes. I recognize the importance of the repeating, the wisdom. Mind is so thick. Boy, isn't that the truth? The minds tend to be pretty thick, don't they? The student should practice to attain the profound knowledge of the highest Lord. From mortality to immortality, from the temporal to eternity, is the only way of realizing truth. It doesn't mean our way is right and everybody else is wrong, but there's only one direction to go. It is always the direction of going from outer to inner. It's always going from the direction of mortality to immortality. So the direction is the same, going from darkness to the light. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. This inward journey finally leads the aspirant to the abode of immortality, which was there all along. Let's see, how are we doing here with time and space? Let me take a quick look here. Do we have time to go on this little thing, or should we pause here? Let's do this and then pause. That light of lights is said to be beyond darkness. The knowledge, yet the object of knowledge, the goal of knowledge. It is established in the heart of all. Nobody's excluded. You're not excluded, Nellie. Thus, briefly, I have stated just playing. I have stated, and I know you know that, briefly I have stated the field as well as knowledge and the effects, objects of knowledge. Knowing this, my devotee becomes ready for becoming me. So the devotee, the Atman, appears to become Brahman. In fact, it was Brahman all along. But again, it's a storyline, and the wisdom is embedded in the story, and we're just stuck with that. So the language, we just have to live with the language. My devotee becomes ready for becoming me. You don't stop being me as a person and personality and become a different personality. Yes, I know you know. Know the primordial nature Prakriti as well as the conscious principle Purusha, both to be beginningless. Know the gunas as well as the products, the vikaras, to be born of Prakriti. What are the products? All of these things out here. I had my glass of water. The product of the Prakriti is the glass of water. It's protons, electrons, and neutrons, and it's hydrogen, and it's oxygen, and it's H2O, and it's just a cup of water. And isn't that beautiful how they all coexist? Prakriti is said to be the cause in the manner of effect, instrument, and agency. Purusha is said to be the cause in apperception of pleasures and pain. And another way of holding this, I don't know if he mentions here, is cause as transcendent or immanent. And this is a philosophy in Western language that goes back to Plato and Aristotle. I've forgotten which one of them came up with it first. And so, one is the material cause, the Prakriti, and Purusha is the consciousness cause, the efficient cause. When the aspirant understands that temporal and the absolute, the feel-unfilled knower, he attains the highest state of truth. Compared to the knower, the capital S self, the field, the body, does not last for a long time. But that does not mean that the aspirant should not understand the body or that he should ignore it and not look after it. For the kshetra is the field of action through which creativity, arts, and sciences find their expression. It is important to understand both units of life, the temporal, the body, breath, senses, and mind, and the capital S self. Know them both. The yogi should learn to keep his body healthy so that he can attain the goal of life. Knowledge and the field of its expression should be understood clearly. The body can become a means, but if not looked after, it can create a stumbling block and barrier. Loving the self, capital S self, does not mean ignoring the body any more than loving someone means hating others. Our master used to say that the real self, capital S self, should be loved, but at the same time, hatred should not be created for the body. When the student goes to the deeper levels of his being, there is a tendency to ignore the body. But he should not forget that a healthy body is always a means, whereas a sickly body demands the attention of the sadhaka and interferes with his practice. Both a healthy body and a sound mind are essential for the sadhaka. Sri Krishna reminds Arjuna that Purusha and Prakriti, the Lord and his power of manifestation, are ancient and without beginning. The student should know the modifications arising out of Prakriti and should know that effect and cause reside together in the causal form in Prakriti. And this causal plane is what we know as the M of Om. The fancy word for that is prajna. So the levels, I'm just saying as a reminder, the levels of consciousness are Vaishrana, Tejasa, Prajna, and Turiya. That's the A, the U, and the Om. And this level down here, the latent unconscious, that's what's being referred to here. Okay? The student should know the modifications arising out of Prakriti and should know that effect and cause reside together in the causal form in Prakriti. And the causal form in Prakriti is the formless form in the sense that the Prakriti is like clay. Think of modeling clay or an artist's clay that can make a statue out of clay, or you make a pot out of clay with a wheel. And so the Prakriti is like the raw clay, and out of that the objects are formed. And that's why it's called the causal form or the causal plane. When the individual soul becomes attached to the desire to experience pleasure, it also experiences misery, for in the absence of one, the other exists. These two pairs of opposite arise from a single cause or a single causal level. That which is the cause of pleasure is also the cause of misery. It's the same clay. It's the same field of prajna. And so now let us stop here. I'm going to make a note here to where we are. Okay, to be continued in a couple days. I forgot what day do we do Bhagavad Gita again? I think Tuesday. And so we will continue from here. Thank you for coming together. Yolanda says, okay. Let's let Yolanda have the final word today. Okay. That was the last thing that Swami Rama said to me, Yolanda, before literally the last time I saw him, a couple days before he dropped the body. He just said to me in Hindi, TK, which means okay, which just means it's all okay. So okay always has a special meaning to me. I take it back into the Hindi of TK. It's all okay. Okay. Alrighty, so thank you all again for visiting and playing, and more to come. What's today? Today is Friday, so we're together 3 times tomorrow, or I will be on here 3 times tomorrow. We're going to do Yoga Sutras, and then at the 2 hour later, the 10 o'clock in the morning ashram time, I want to go through with you the article on modern and traditional yoga. Thanks for visiting and playing, Ed. Bye-bye, Nellie. No, I did not get that message. Thank you, Nellie. Marluce announced the baby girl today. Well, wonderful. If you have contact, would you pass along my congratulations and the little tear that's in my eye? I don't think I have direct contact with Marluce. So if you do, you can pass that on for me if you would so kindly. Thanks for playing, Ed. What a joy. Yes, what a joy. There's a heart and some hands from Yolanda. Good to see you, Yolanda. Okay, bye all. Remember, have a nice meditation, and what we're looking for is to be found in the silence within after the Om, beyond all this Prakriti out here. This is the field knower. All of this is the field. That's what this chapter is about that we're going through. This is the field knower, and this is the field. And it's one of the things I like about the question mark that I put on here. Swami Rama made the thing, I added the question mark. And it's a little bit like saying that this chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that it doesn't matter. We know what it's called. We know to call this Atman, and and it's Purusha. And the Purusha comes from the word Pura, which means city. So Purusha is Atman dwelling in the city of life. And so this is Atman or Purusha, but it doesn't matter what you call it. It is the knower of the field. It's the reason that I like the word Drastu, when Patanjali says Tata Drastu Svarupe Avasanam, then the seer rests in his own true nature. And he uses the word Drastu that just means seer, doesn't mean physical eyeball. It means the knower of the field. Different words for the same thing, but beautifully, artfully escapes having to give it a definition that then begs the question, well, what's the meaning of that word? And then we get lost chasing words around. Anyway, there is the knower of the field, and there is the field. So find that by looking into the silence that's after the Om. Have a nice meditation, okay? And have fun with contemplation. And enjoy life. Have fun. See you soon again, okay? If anybody wants to get together and play with this video stuff, particularly in the Table Talk group, let me know. Matri and Raj and Leela and Philip and I are going to start trying to do some more stuff together there as a means of getting people involved. Nellie, you've gotten pretty smart with being online videos, so if anybody wants to do one of these kind of things just to have conversation together, we're trying to cultivate some more of that kind of activity in the Table Talk group. And if you want to play in that kind of way, let me know and we'll get it on there. If we can get a few of us that are comfortable, it's getting easier to use this technology. And if you want to play like that, let me know there and we'll do something. Okay. See you later. Bye-bye. As the Dutchies say, dooey dooey. Which is just a short version of Om Tat Sat. That's the way I look at it. Dewey, Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat.